Hello, it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. My name is Dr. Jonathan Westover, and I'm going to be presenting what I've titled Designing Meaningful Work Leadership Implications for the Future of Work. And I'm excited to be a part of the Wellness and Wellbeing Summit. This presentation is based on some research that I've done looking at job satisfaction and its determinants across 37 countries based on data from the most recent wave of the International Social Survey Program. The research explores various work-life balance factors, job autonomy, and meaningful work indicators, and the related considerations for managers as they work to design their work, including remote work during the COVID pandemic. We know that well-designed jobs that provide meaning and purpose to employees, the autonomy to determine how they perform their work, and that provide for various work-life balance benefits are proven to drive higher levels of work satisfaction and engagement, which has enormous benefits for both workers and their employers alike. These benefits include increased productivity, innovation, and less job turnover and absenteeism. And the whole point of this summit is to talk about wellness and well-being. I think focusing in on things like burnout, job turnover, absenteeism is super important and particularly timely as we think about the current context of the labor market and we think about the great resignation and what employers can do to attract and retain better talent and to meet the needs of their people. So this is what I'll be exploring with all of you today over the next 20 or so minutes. I wanted to start by talking about the importance of what I frame as a people-centered organization, taking a human capital perspective around how we deal with our human capital, our human assets within the organization. We have all of these different forms of capital at the disposal of organizational leaders to try to bring value to the market. We talk a lot about financial capital. We talk about property, plant, equipment, intellectual property. We talk about all these different forms of capital. A lot of times, human capital or the human resources is kind of left on the back burner. We take it for granted that the people in our organizations are just happy to be there, that they need their paycheck, and that they're going to continually show up, be committed, and that they're going to be engaged and productive in their work. And we just know there's so much research that shows that that's not really a safe assumption. We can't take that for granted. And if we don't invest in our human capital, just like we invest in other forms of capital, think about how much money an organization puts into servicing and upgrading and maintaining a heavy piece of equipment, for example. When we have property that needs maintenance, we take care of it. But do we maintain our people? Do we invest in our people just like we invest in other forms of capital? So what I argue at the foundation of everything that we're going to be talking about today is that it's essential that we adopt a people-centered organizational approach, that we are a people-centric leadership style, and that we value our people first and foremost, that we treat them with dignity and respect, that we always seek to find ways to help them have a healthy workplace environment. And that's not just in terms of physical health and safety, but that's in terms of psychological health and safety. And all of these, of course, feed into employee well-being. One way to look at this, you can see laid out in this flow chart. This flow chart actually represents thousands of studies, academic studies that have looked at these various relationships. And this is just a small fraction of what we know about the relationships between how work is designed and the experience of employees in the workplace and what that means for a whole variety of organizational outcomes. Here specifically, we start with interesting jobs at the top or knowledge sharing environment at the bottom. And then we can work our way through some of the relationships through this flow chart to see that ultimately what we want to get at as an organization is high profits, right? That's why companies exist. They want to bring value to the shareholders and various stakeholders. They want to have profits. We need to look at the business case of having a people-centric, high-performance work system. If we want to have a people-centric organization, how is this going to matter beyond just feeling like it's the right thing to do for people, but what's the bottom line impact and what's the business case for all of this? So that's what this flow chart demonstrates. If we start with interesting work, if we design work that really captures the attention and provides meaning, purpose, and fulfillment for our people, where they feel satisfied, that can drive higher profits. So interesting jobs lead to more satisfied workers. More satisfied workers lead to more satisfied customers. More satisfied workers also leads to lower levels of absenteeism, lower turnover. I would add burnout in there. And more satisfied customers leads to higher sales and to higher profits. Ultimately, if our people turn over less, if they're absent less, if they go through withdrawal cognitions less, that lowers costs and that also leads to higher profits. So on the top part of this flowchart diagram, you can see a clear business case for why it's important to be people centric and why it's important to invest in our human capital and to create and design work that is interesting, meaningful, and purposeful for our people that drives employee satisfaction and engagement. At the bottom of the diagram, you can see knowledge sharing. So creating a knowledge sharing environment for our people to thrive. More knowledge sharing, a culture of, driven by growth mindset, where we really promote experimentation, where we encourage people to try new things, where we want our people to bring their whole selves to their work, where they have autonomy to take ownership over their work, and where they can be creative and they can where they can experiment and try to bring new value to their teams and to the customers. When we create that kind of a knowledge sharing environment, that leads to higher levels of innovation. Higher levels of innovation lead to higher levels of quality, which of course positively impact customer satisfaction, higher sales, higher profits. Knowledge sharing environments also create all sorts of hacks where we can be more efficient and productive, and allows us to just produce higher profits through the innovations that we create. So either way we look at it, and again, this is just two of many possible relationship flows that we can examine in terms of the business case of a people-centric organization. But as we look at it, we can quickly start to see that this makes sense. Just like we want to invest in a piece of equipment, we also need to and want to invest in our people, the human capital of the organization. Now, this has always been important, but I think it's even more important in this day and age. Now, we're 2 years into a global pandemic. We're trying to think about how we can meet the needs of our people while meeting the increasingly complex demands of the modern organization. And how do we make sure that we stay competitive so we can stay in business, we can continue to add value to the marketplace, but simultaneously we treat our people well with dignity and respect, and we recognize the challenges that they've been facing. Now, the pandemic has only exacerbated the challenges that we've seen in the workplace and the shifting conditions and the nature of work. Technological innovations have been driving these changes for a long time. So even before the pandemic, we'd seen a continuous move and shift towards more contingent workforce, more distributed workforce, more virtual workforce, utilizing various technologies to support that movement. This has only been accelerated over the last 2 years during the pandemic. And we all know, we remember what it was like in March of 2020, and almost on a dime, everything changed and we had to shift very quickly. Universities had to shift and move online. Organizations had to shift, and many organizations moved to a completely remote workforce during that time. And of course, all of that was very challenging, but it was facilitated through technologies. Now that I wouldn't say that we're out of the pandemic, but we've grown more accustomed to the technological innovations that can provide support as we try to work in a remote or hybrid work environment. Now we just are continually kind of springboarding into the future of work. So what many analysts, myself included, thought might take another 10 years, we're already there. In terms of how jobs have changed, how the design of work has changed, how the use of technology and work has changed. And all of this has implications for employee well-being. All of this has implications for how well our people feel valued, supported, and that they can be their whole authentic self and be successful in the workplace. So we're going to explore all of that a little bit more. Before we get into that, though, just really quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there are a lot of skills that are needed in the future workplace. This report specifically came out from the Institute for the Future, the Future Work Skills report in 2020, and it lays out this diagram of these mega drivers of change throughout the world. We're in an increasingly computational world with superstructured organizations. We're increasingly globally interconnected with new media ecologies. We have all these smart machines and systems, and the demographics are shifting as well with an older and older workforce and populace. And so extreme longevity plays a role. And within the context of all those drivers, some of the major skills and competencies and capabilities needed for the future workplace include things like cognitive load management, virtual collaboration skills, new media literacy, cross-cultural competencies, novel and adaptive thinking, sense-making, design mindset, and transdisciplinarity. Now, we could spend tons of time just talking about this one single slide. That's not the intention of this presentation today. I simply am sharing this for a little bit of context around, again, what is happening with the shifting nature of work and what we need from employees in the future of work in order for organizations to be successful and in order for employees to find meaning, fulfillment, and success in their careers. We need people with these skill sets. Now, with all of that as a background, I want to dive on in to some of the research that I've been doing. I'm not going to get into all the quantitative results, and there's so much we could pull apart, but I do want to get into some of the findings and share those with you. And this is all based on research and data from the International Social Survey Program, the 2015 work orientations data. Now, they have another wave of data that should be coming out in the next year or so, and it's going to be fascinating to look at this data and to see the shift over a 7 to 8 year period, especially considering the pandemic had happened during that time. From all of this, I look specifically using this theoretical framework and model to understand a variety of individual control variables, both from the individual and family context, as well as the organizational and job characteristics context. And you can see the different types of variables involved there. I also looked at other key independent variables in categories such as work-life balance, intrinsic rewards, extrinsic rewards, and workplace relationships. And then all the relationship of all of that, the interactions of all of those components, and how they then impact job satisfaction of employees, which is the dependent variable. And from all of that, there was, just loads and loads of data. There's about 30,000 respondents across 37 countries. And to summarize briefly, I'll just say that the predictability of this model is powerful, but also varies widely across those 37 countries. So for those of you who have a statistical background and you know what an adjusted R squared is, that's model fit and model predictability. In some countries, such as China, this model only predicts about 20% of the variability in job satisfaction. And so you plug in all the inputs, you look at all these variables for an individual in the workforce, and it'll predict about 20% of how satisfied they are in their job. But you go into other countries, such as many of the Nordic countries, and this model predicts more like closer to 70% of their job satisfaction. And kind of the global mean is it predicts for everyone around the world in one sample, it predicts around 45% of job satisfaction. So that's interesting that there's huge variation in the predictability of the model in and of itself. There's also huge variation as you look at the drivers, the descriptive statistics behind of these various drivers across different countries, or even just job satisfaction across different countries. Some countries that have relatively low job satisfaction of its workforce, other countries that tend to have really high levels of job satisfaction. And we don't have time to get into all the reasons for all those global country contextual factors that drive those differences across countries. But just I wanted to share that those exist. The point of this then is it just adds another level of complexity to organizations trying to create meaningful jobs that drive meaning, purpose, and fulfillment for their people, and ultimately can help the organization to succeed as well. There's just so much complexity there that organizations are grappling with. And just layered on top of all of that, you have the pandemic. And how do we actually make work more meaningful and more fulfilling, reducing burnout, reducing other negative impacts of stress and anxiety on our people so that they can be their full, whole, authentic self, and we can really prioritize the well-being of our people. So these are just some of the types of questions that are really important for organizational leaders to really consider as we move into the future of work. Now, in the time remaining, I just want to focus in on a handful of variables that I looked at in the study around work-life balance, and meaningful and purpose-driven work. So first, meaningful work. We know out of all of the different variables, meaningful work drove higher levels of job satisfaction more than any other variable. And when meaningful work, when people reported that was missing in their job satisfaction went down sharply, and their intention to leave work and go work for another company increased dramatically. So we need to ask ourselves questions like, why does it matter if employees find their work interesting? How can I demonstrate to my employees that their work benefits the broader society in more meaningful ways? How do my employees feel about their work, and how can I better design the jobs of my team so the work they do is more meaningful? Now, this is just a small sampling of the types of questions I can and should be asking myself as a leader. And this will go into how I design the jobs of my people and how hopefully they can find meaning and fulfillment and purpose in the work that they do to drive better health outcomes, psychological health and physical health for my people. Another really core component, and this is both of these, meaningful work and job autonomy, are among the most important factors in countries across the world. So even though we see tremendous global differences and country level differences around different drivers of job satisfaction, employee engagement, and those sorts of things, consistently we know that meaningful work and job autonomy are really important drivers of job satisfaction. So for job autonomy, what are some of the practical steps that I as a leader can take today to enhance the sense of job autonomy in my team and within my organization? What are some of the specific ways that members of my team experience a greater sense of job autonomy, and how can I better support them in that autonomy so that they can feel empowered to do what they do well and find that meaning and purpose in the work that they do? What are simple ways I can start implementing greater job autonomy in my business strategy today, this week? What can I start to do? And it doesn't matter if you're in a factory setting, if you're on a work site like construction, or if you're in a white collar job in an office setting, whether you're in person, hybrid, or virtual. There are ways, and often relatively simple things you can do to enhance job autonomy just through the design of work and how you interact with your people. And that's going to be hugely, hugely important. And what are ways my organization can start providing greater levels of job autonomy for my people today? These are all very important. Now, a few others that I really wanted to just highlight quickly. I won't actually read through all these questions, but you will have access to these slides. And I encourage you to take the time to self-reflect and consider how do all these impact you in your day-to-day work? And if you're in a leadership role, what can you do to increase and enhance the context and the situation for your people? Working from home, we know that people value flexibility and the ability to work from home. So that's what these two variables look at. And there's so many different types of reflective questioning that we can go through that process to think about application and implications for our workforce. But the bottom line is, our people want and need schedule flexibility. The pandemic has taught us that when the world is spinning around us and there's so many uncertainties and so many complexities, and especially if you're like dealing with elder care or child care and trying to do all of that amidst meeting the demands of your job, that we just need flexibility. We can work from home. We have technology to assist in that. We need to break down barriers to work from home opportunities for our people, and we need to allow them to do work when it makes sense for them. And for some people, that means get up early so you can get some work done before the kids need to get ready for school, and you help them get breakfast, and then you do work while they're at school, and then you help them with their homework, and they get home from school and then go back to work after dinner or after they go to bed. Who cares when they do their work, as long as it gets done and it's of high quality? And obviously, some types of jobs require more scheduling rigidity, But in the research that I've conducted, we found that even when controlling for job type, for kind of the position and role and the level you are in the organization, there are tremendous opportunities for most jobs to be significantly more flexible for employees. Another kind of offshoot of that is flexibility to deal with family matters. So if I'm trying to homeschool my children while doing my own work from home, that is a tremendously challenging situation. And many of us have lived that over the last couple of years. So, what has the organization done to allow that flexibility to deal with family matters? And a lot of that's cultural, but it's also policy, practice, and procedure, and just how it's viewed within the organization. So these are all things we also need to consider. Other aspects like reducing work interference with family, having weekends off, or at least consistency in when we have time off, those are also really, really important factors. All of this, and I've just really highlighted a handful of components from this research and from the study with the International Social Survey. I would encourage you to reach out to me if you want more details on any of this research. And all of this has led to, I don't know, dozens of academic articles and dozens of practitioner-oriented articles in magazines and academic journals that lay out all of these results and get into a lot more detail. And I'm happy to share those with you. The bottom line is we need to value our people. We need to have strive to have an employee-centric organization where, excuse me, where we invest in our people continuously and we focus on some of these core components that will lead to better job satisfaction, better employee engagement, that will lead to a more healthy, psychologically and physically healthy workplace. And ultimately, that will drive better outcomes for our people, for our teams, and for our organizations as a whole. And with that, I think I'm out of time. So I'm just going to say thank you. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me at john.westover@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with all of you. Thank you.